Ghostbusters The Frozen Empire is here, the newest installment to the Ghostbusters franchise. So, this was the movie coming out this week, so I went to see it. I have not seen Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I was kind of excited to see this because I thought to myself, is this movie going to stand on its own? Now, I have heard after the fact that actually, unlike the 2016 Ghostbusters disaster,
oh my God, help me!
Hi, Patty.
that Ghostbusters Afterlife was actually pretty good until the last 20 minutes when it just became kind of an empty nostalgia fest, but the movie leading up to that was its own original quality thing. However, regardless of the fact that this is basically a sequel, a good movie, should still be able to stand on its own, even if you haven't seen the original, right? A perfect example of this would be the China Star Wars disaster. So you had the new Star Wars movies come out. China's the big hot movie market. They send them over there. Financial disaster. Everybody in China says, what is this? These suck. You know why? Because they didn't grow up with Star Wars. They're not watching these crap movies with their rose-tinted nostalgia glasses and lying to themselves that this is actually a quality product. So I said to myself, okay, is this going to be a quality product? Can I get into this not having seen the first one? Well, the answer is that I fell asleep. This is actually a pretty big deal for me. I fell asleep to one movie before in a theater ever. And I recall this with crystal clarity. It was like 20 years ago, and it was Mr. Deeds. And I remember this event because it was shocking to me. It was shocking to me that I could fall asleep watching a movie. And you can't forget here, this is Adam Sandler at his apex. He's following up from Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, The Wedding Singer, The Water Boy, Little Nicky. It's just like one after another after another. This was one of the hottest stars on the planet. But I started watching Mr. Deeds and I realized it was just the same formula for the 18th time. And it was old and tired and I just didn't really care anymore. And I fell asleep right there in that theater chair. Well, it has finally happened again, ladies and gentlemen. I have fallen asleep to a movie, and it is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Now, ironically enough, I think Ghostbusters Frozen Empire has more to offer than Mr. Deeds did. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad movie, but at the same time, if it's a movie that makes me fall asleep, I don't think it's a great movie. So what is the plot? And yes, there will be spoilers here, as there always is with movies that I don't particularly care for. The plot is that I guess Egon Spangler had a grandchild and she's really into ghostbusting. And since I didn't see the last movie, it seems to be set up that she got into ghostbusting. They're in New York. They're in the old fire station. The memberberries have been turned up to the max and they are hunting ghosts.
Hey, remember Ghostbusters? Oh, I remember. Remember Slimy?
And I will compliment the movie right off the back. The opening sequence is excellent. There's a little flashback to 1901 New York or something like that, and these old firefighters with their fire axes and their little steam engine show up at an apartment building, and they enter what looks like kind of a gentleman's society room meeting. Except the entire room has been frozen in ice. Everyone is frozen in place in horrifying positions. And the atmosphere is legitimately cryptic and scary. In fact, there's a very nice little touch where one of the Gentlemen's Club members was like cranking a record player, and his frozen hand is still being moved by the record player crank, which has been broken off. What a great sequence. And then at the very last second, the camera flashes down and shows this ridiculous pseudo-Middle Eastern Indian armored person holding a silver globe who is not frozen. And that's my big problem. If they were frozen, at least would have kept me in the scene. But it was such a jarring transition that I felt like I was slapped in the face with a wet cod. And it was a miss. I just don't understand why they had to put that person there. Could have just as easily had one of those old English chaps from the Gentlemen's Club frozen in place holding that silver ball, and it would have fit the current narrative. You know, these evil white men going across the world, pillaging ancient cultures, and they've discovered something that killed them all. But besides that last second, excellent opening scene. Sadly, the movie just kind of goes downhill from there. They're in New York, they're ghostbusting, it's Paul Rudd and pretty much a bunch of no-names, though definitely the big standout here is McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spangler. I'll get into that later. She is kind of the focal point of the movie, but essentially they're ghostbusting, there's a horrible supernatural threat. They're going to get together and they're going to solve this before it takes over the world and a giant blue light appears in the sky, though I do think this time around it's a magenta light, or maybe it's red. And as mentioned before, the nostalgia berries are on full effect here, but at least they're integrating it into the movie. It's been made very apparent. The entire movie is full of callbacks. In fact, even the music itself has that little da-da-da-da-da that you found in the old Ghostbusters, tying everything together. All the cast is coming back. There's lots of callbacks to scenes from, the good Ghostbusters movies, i.e. Ghostbusters and kind of Ghostbusters 2. The big issue I had was, outside of the horrible supernatural threat, nothing particularly interesting was going on. The movie is just kind of dragging its feet. Perfect example, there's this randomly placed scene with all these little mini Stay Puft boys, and everybody knows putting minion-like characters and cute things in a movie is going to make it successful and popular with the kids. But I'm watching this sequence and I'm like, Jesus, does this movie have anything to say? Well, not really. The main thrust of the movie, outside of the supernatural threat, which follows, I assume, because I was asleep during this part, some ancient Indian deity, is that little Miss Spangler, Phoebe Spangler, is too young to be ghostbusting. The evil mayor has said, you're too young to be ghostbusting, and she's like, God damn it, I have to just be on TikTok all day now, like every other person her age. However, this does lead to the more interesting subplot of the movie, which is her making friends with a ghost. So she's out on a park bench playing chess in the middle of the night on the New York street, which is what all the 15-year-old girls are doing these days. And the chess pieces start moving on their own, and she meets a fellow ghost, a girl who seems to be about her age. Now, outside of the fact that this is a far more interesting concept than just some evil big bad, was I the only one picking up some chemistry here? I mean, literally, I felt like their scenes had some serious romantic tension. Now, God knows it's heresy to imply that a minor might have feelings for someone in this day and age before they've turned 18. But seriously, I legitimately thought that this was going to end up being like a lesbian ghost love story, which would have been awesome. I mean, they did it in Casper.
Casper?
Right? And these are modern times, let's put that into a movie. Let's put something exciting like that, a lesbian ghost love story. And not only that, it would actually be canon. I mean, am I the only one who remembers this scene from the original Ghostbusters? That was not a kid's movie. And I wish that this one wasn't trying so hard to be. And in just a laundry list of constant callbacks, we got a little bit more of that. But sadly, that subplot seems to peter out, or who knows, maybe it didn't. Maybe when I fell asleep, there was some Blade Runner 2049 shit going on in the bedroom, but I missed it, and I'm very sad about that. And then, I don't even know, maybe a half an hour later I woke up. And I woke up at an extremely opportune time, which is that Phoebe Spangler had figured out a way to basically kill herself and turn herself into a ghost, a la the Frighteners. And so she jumps out of the chamber as a ghost. Her ghost girlfriend is there. And I honestly thought they were about to kiss and the movie was about to go somewhere, but they didn't. And the big bad shows up and everybody's scared and it's horrible and it's the end of the world. And I kind of gamely stayed awake for the rest of it. And, everybody just kind of follows the pattern. The big threat, and then they get the guy and the movie ends. And that's it. All right, let's talk about the cast, the make or the break of this movie. There's exactly one standout role, which is Phoebe Spangler, played by McKenna Grace, who I don't really know anything about, but she adds a lot of heart. She's cute, she's interesting, she's definitely the focal point of this movie, and to the benefit of it. The only other standout performance I would say would be Dan Aykroyd, of all things. Most of the cast is just kind of this pathetic wandering back into the screen. Dan Aykroyd is really trying here. He's entertaining. It makes me wish that we've seen more of him in the last 20 years or so, but he was too busy making Crystal Skull vodka, I guess.
We are confident that people will enjoy Crystal Head, Triple Herkimer Diamond Filtered Newfoundland Deep Aquifer Pure Spirit Vodka.
The rest of our ensemble cast does not fare as well, I'm afraid. You know, Paul Rudd shows up and he's pretty much playing Paul Rudd. Maybe he had a bigger role in the last movie. I don't know. I don't really care. I had to look up his name. One of those kids from Stranger Things, Finn Wolfhard. I'm sorry. This guy has no talent and he's unattractive. And you have to have one of those things to make it in this industry. And it's interesting. It's sometimes when the certain light hits his face is so large and angular, it almost kind of works, but at the same time, you know, we're left with the fact that he just isn't interesting to watch on screen. So please go away, most of the Stranger Things cast. And of course, our last special guest star would be Kumali Ali, playing the Indian descendant of the Firestarters who are here to get rid of the big bad evil guy. Now, maybe when I was asleep, this plot was greatly enhanced. In fact, I know that it was because in the trailers, you kept hearing the voice of Patton Oswalt, and I did not see him in this movie, so I'm assuming he showed up when I was asleep, and that's all the better for it. But quite frankly, that whole subplot just wasn't interesting me at all. He kind of plays the comic relief, but there is not that much comic, and certainly there's not a lot of relief there. And then we get to the old cast, because this movie really is kind of a love letter goodbye to the Ghostbusters anthology or whatever it was, but I hate most of them. I mean, once again, you have to let these things die and start something new, but they just keep coming back. Ernie Hudson, I'll compliment him on being competent, and not only that, but he just makes all his other co-stars look terrible in terms of age. It's that melanin, baby. I mean, he looks great. He looks like it's been 5 years since Ghostbusters 2. Everyone else looks like it's been 50 years since Ghostbusters 2. And he does a good job. And thinking about him reminds me of the disaster that is William Atherton, who played the environmental inspector in the very first Ghostbusters.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion. Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
And I'm sorry, you know, sometimes people just get too old and really shouldn't be in political positions of power. No, but we're talking about him as an actor. I'm sorry, he's just... Most of the scenes, I was honestly worried he was going to have a heart attack right there. I'm surprised he survived through the production. And it gets so sad that at the very end of the movie, Ernie Hudson basically he's being interviewed by the press as the mayor, and it looks like he's unable to even know what he's supposed to be saying. So Ernie Hudson steps in and goes, "It's the Ghostbusters, yeah!" And the movie ends and the music rises. And yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, there is a limit there has to be to bringing the old cast members back. If anything, very small cameos. Speaking of very small cameos, there's Janine Annie Potts, you know, the secretary from the first, probably the second movie as well. She's there. Yeah, you know, the team's back. Not much more to say on that front. And then, of course, Bill Murray kind of waltzes in at literally the last 5 minutes of the movie and says hi and clearly could care less about what's going on. Kind of giving the same performance he's been giving for the last 30 years with the exception of Lost in Translation and Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And it's funny, it's as he's grown older, his serious performances in his later stages of his life are a lot better than his comedic ones. And I've grown to start resenting him, and that resentment started probably 20 years ago when he was in City of Ember, which is one of the greatest kids movies ever made, about a city of people who live beneath the earth and they've been shut off from the outside society for hundreds of years. And everybody in that movie is passionate and involved, and it's a good film, but he plays the mayor, and I mean, he's running at half capacity. It's clear he's there for a paycheck, and it's just disappointing. Last but not least, I forgot in the new cast, the ghost girl, the ghost relationship that wasn't. I thought she was actually being played by that girl from Wednesday. All these young actors seem to look the same to me these days. But it was actually Snakebite Andy from Dr. Sleep, Emily Ann Lynn, who does a good job. She does a great job. You know what? It's funny. Maybe that's where I'm getting the vibes, because in Dr. Sleep, she also played like a pseudo lesbian who actually didn't like that. Maybe that's where I got this whole dreamlike state I'm in thinking about this. Anyway, that does it. Sure, there's other people in the movie, but they're not worth talking about. Yeah, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Don't recommend it. I mean, let's be honest here, 90% of anything is crap anyway. There are some flashes of genius, there are some interesting parts, but in general, I just wish we would do new things. You know, I'm not going to disparage the cast for trying. There was kind of an interesting story at play here. There was interesting angles. There were some good performances, and I think the conclusion that we have to reach here is more Dan Aykroyd. I want more Dan Aykroyd. Put this man in a Netflix miniseries, because Dan Aykroyd has still got it, baby. He is still in the thick of it.
Crystal Head, triple Herkimer diamond filtered Newfoundland deep aquifer pure spirit vodka.
But as for Ghostbusters, just let it die. Let the magic die. You had Ghostbusters 1, you kind of had Ghostbusters 2, that's it. Same thing as Star Wars. First 3 movies, everything else, well, no, that's not true. Disney's shotgun effect, they finally shot enough shit against the wall that they actually did some good Star Wars series, mainly The Mandalorian Season 1, Andor. So, I mean, I guess they could make another 20 Ghostbusters movies. Eventually, one of them will be good. Thank you for joining me. If you've been here all the way to the end, consider subscribing. It always makes me want to make more of these videos. You guys have a great day.